Teachers, what's the worst classroom situation you've returned to? Viewer edition.
Story 1. My teacher spotted someone in my class holding a pack of M&Ms and stopped him from opening because it contains peanuts. Let's call the boy Nut. The girl near him is severely allergic to nuts. Nut told the teacher that it may contain peanuts, but my teacher said he still cannot eat it. Nut got really angry and yelled at my teacher, saying that he's allergic to peanuts, but he can eat it. My teacher kept saying that he still couldn't eat it, but opened the M&M package and started eating it in front of her. My teacher quickly sent the girl out of the class. The teacher went out of the classroom to get help from another teacher. While my teacher was outside the class, a boy, let's call him Apple, tried to convince Nut not to eat it, but then Nut started swearing at Apple. I didn't think much of Nut swearing because almost all the class swears while the teacher isn't there. I just sat there and ate some grapes until Nut did something that surprised me. He threw a chair at Apple. Luckily, Apple dodged it and ran out of the classroom. The other girl beside her quickly backed away from Nut. A teacher soon came and started talking to Nut. My teacher started calling the office. That's when Nut started crying and yelled out our teacher saying the R word, dumb and stupid. Once our teacher was done calling the office, she walked the class to the school chapel and sent 2 students to find Apple and the other girl allergic to nuts. Once we sat down, the teacher talked to us about allergies and how people can do stuff without thinking when they are mad. I was surprised how calm she was about the whole situation. Some students who were classmates with Nut last year said that this happened before. I knew he could be like that. I was classmates with Nut in the 1st grade, but I didn't know he would do all that. Once we finally went back to the classroom, the class was a mess. Chairs and desks were flipped over, and pencils were all over the floor. Only a few desks, such as mine, survived. Me and the rest of the students had to clean up the classroom. I assumed that Nut would have been suspended, but he was there in class the next day. The only thing good about the whole situation was that we skipped math. I mean, anything that gets you out of math class is a net positive in my book. I mean, realistically, I know nut allergies can be pretty severe as far as allergies go. Like, they're one of the more severe ones, so I don't know if the teacher overreacted or not. I don't know enough about those things, but it does sound like you said the teacher was awfully reasonable about stuff and not expelling the students, so honestly, that's pretty much a thumbs up to me for that teacher in that school for handling things, I mean, better than some would. Story 2. Little context. In my country, students stay put in the same room the whole day, and it's the teachers that rotate between classrooms, and we would have about 5-minute period to ourselves between classes. So one day in middle school, during one of those 5 minutes in between classes, the students started playing around, and it got to the point where they started throwing things around. First harmless things like paper balls, then it escalated to pens, pencil cases, and even an effing nail clipper. Eventually they started throwing around a whole effing apple with full force until it started to fall apart, leaving its flesh everywhere with all its collisions and crap. The chunks of mutilated apple were then used as projectiles as well, but there was still the larger hole, which was mostly intact, that was still being thrown around too. Someone then threw it at the ceiling and it hit a ceiling lamp, causing one of its glass panes to plummet to the ground and shatter into 3 large pieces upon impact. Everyone was silent with shock. In a panic, they all started to figure out what to do with the situation until someone had the idea to make it seem like it just fell on someone's head out of nowhere. The thing is, they tried putting the largest of the 3 pieces of broken glass upon the ceiling by sticking it clumsily into what remained of the lamp, which just ruined the whole plan because they should have just left it lying on the floor. Now it was clear that it had been tampered with. When the next teacher arrived, he found everyone quiet in their seats, debris and apple pieces everywhere, with 3 students coming up to him holding 2 chunks of broken glass, telling him about how they had fallen on someone's head. Obviously, he didn't buy it, and like 11 of us, including me, even though I literally didn't participate, got in trouble for it, and the school sent us to watch a play about drugs and AIDS as punishment. The students have been misbehaving. They need to learn a lesson. We don't have any lessons about this particular kind of circumstance. I don't care. Just teach them any old lesson. I mean, I guess you got to learn about, drugs and AIDS, so that's probably good.
Story 3. This didn't happen as a result of the teacher leaving, but because my Spanish teacher last year gave 0 Fs about everything other than cell phones. There were plenty of incidents that happened in class, but this is the worst one. The periods at my school are over an hour long, so you can imagine how boring they can get. During the middle of a lesson, all of a sudden I hear a small explosion. Not really an explosion, but I don't know how else to describe it. Go off and smoke by the person in the row next to mine. Someone stuck a mechanical pencil into an outlet. The class convinced her that someone had dropped something really heavy, so the lesson continued. Later on, this time directly behind me, I hear another explosion, but way louder, and see a spark out of the corner of my eye. Someone else did the same thing, but effing stabbed it. The whole outlet was covered in ash, and part of the carpet was burnt. This time, the teacher realized what was going on and acts appropriately. When the period ended, I got the videos of it happening, both times airdropped. The next week, the 2 students got suspended, and there was this zebra pattern duct tape on the 2 outlets. Along with that, we had to write about what happened in English. Pretty sure she left once the school year was over. Story 4. I remember I was in biology class and the teacher had to leave for a bit. She didn't give a reason, but I don't think she went far. Soon after she left, this one kid thought it would be funny to go and turn off the lights, so he walked over casually and turned them off. I guess a girl wasn't paying attention and didn't notice the boy walking up to the switch, so when the lights went out, she screamed. Some other kids in the room started mocking her by screaming and laughing at her, and other kids started getting in on it too, myself included. It devolved into us just screaming or making monkey noises. It lasted for about 10 seconds until the teacher came back. She turned on the lights, and everyone went silent. The boy who flipped the switch had made his way back to his desk, so when the lights came back on, we were all just sitting there silently looking at her. Needless to say, she was peed, but since it wasn't destructive and there was no way for us to figure out who was actually taking part in the yelling and nobody snitched on Light Switch Kid, she just scolded us for like 5 minutes and went back to what she was doing before she left. Story 5. Not a teacher, but the student. In my first year of middle school, we had a big group chat in an app that was called Line. It's basically a really popular messaging app that pretty much everyone in Japan uses. For the first few months of the first term, I was actually in it. That is, until I suddenly felt like I didn't want to be in the group anymore on a Wednesday and left the group. The next day, the class found out that a girl was streaming one of the classes on Instagram, and the faces of some of the students were out on the internet. And after school ended, everyone went absolutely ham on her. A lot of students from other classes even joined in to get a piece of the action, and half the class was berating her and the other half was protecting her. At its peak, one of my classmates even made a poll to ask people whose side they were on. I had no idea about this because I had left the group a day prior. Come next day, and I get a message saying that a huge portion of the class was in trouble from one of my friends. When I get to school, the girl is on the verge of tears. I felt somewhat bad, and the teacher tells us what happened. The video is deleted now, and it got pretty much no views in the first place. I really dodged a bullet. Story 6. Man, it didn't happen when the teacher left, but when the teacher was in the classroom, happening in high school. The student was basically the class a-hole and would mess with people, constantly use the bathroom just to skip class, everything under the sun. One day, the teacher told the student they couldn't go to the bathroom. Student was PO'd, whipped out an empty soda bottle, went to the corner, peed in it, and capped it. I half expected the SOB to start flinging it around. Student got a referral to the office. I've had bomb threats at my school, kids pulling knives out of their bags and getting caught. This was serious stuff since Columbine happened right around the time I started high school.
Okay, the bomb threats and knives are genuinely pretty scary and stuff, but I don't know. I believe that if a student needs to go to the bathroom, teachers let him go to the bathroom. But if a kid is constantly using that as a way to like skip class and stuff, I don't know what the solution to that is, but even still, God, just peeing in a bottle, I don't know. No one's in the right. Just stop. Everyone just stop.
Story 7. I was a first aider in college. The teacher of a special needs class had climbed onto a chair, which then broke, causing her to fall and hurt her back. Another first aider had seen her and called an ambulance. I was called in afterwards to a scene out of a nightmare. The shock of seeing their teacher hurt had caused one guy to fall out of his wheelchair. Another was having a fit under a table. Another was screaming and rocking. It was like being in a training video, prioritizing the students and getting the situation under control. As I didn't know the students, I called an ambulance for the one who had a fit and got told off by their family, as it often happens, and they were fed up with having to go to the hospital unnecessarily. Story 8. I remember spearheading a hilarious prank in high school. Freshman year, I was in a school that had a really old building with the ceiling tiles that pencils could easily get stuck into. The teacher said she was expecting an important phone call sometime that day, and I took advantage of that. Several friends joined in the fun. We had a huge box of brand new pencils, and I sharpened pretty much all of them in preparation for when the teacher stepped out. She had stepped out for about 6 to 8 minutes, and by the time she came back, we had close to 100 pencils stuck in the ceiling. She was so peed off when she returned and saw all those pencils stuck on the ceiling tiles. Thankfully, I didn't get in trouble, as no one confessed or snitched. Story 9. In my middle school, there was this one time my teacher almost drank her bottle of water that had chalk in it. Luckily, she noticed and didn't. The thing is, she left her bottle of water on the teacher's desk during our 15-minute break. More than half of my class was out, while about 10 to 15 of us were still in the class, fooling around or just doing our own thing in our seats like me. My seat was pretty close to the teacher's table, so I was asked if I noticed who put the chalk in her drink, and the answer is, I friggin' don't know. I wasn't paying attention, and frankly, there's quite a lot of students also coming near the teacher's table during that time. Another student pointed out a certain group of troublemaker boys that play around the teacher's table during the break, and the teacher punished them. I almost got punished because I was suspected too. It's probably one of the boys, but none of them admit it, so they all got punished.
Why are people putting chalk in a teacher's water? It's just a whole stick of chalk, right? So probably, I guess you could maybe choke on that. Don't do that. That's a weird prank and just kind of, I don't know. Pranks should be fun and not hurt anyone and just be a little bit silly, and those are good. We don't have to put chalk in people's water. That's gross. Like a little bit of salt in their water, so the teacher's like, oh, what, like, that's, I don't know, that's pretty dumb too. I got nothing.
Story 10. I was in middle school around 8th grade. We had most of the trouble guys in our class, and it would get chaotic. Now we had art class, and obviously there's a lot to break in an art class. So, once our teacher left, the boys got up and walked over to one of the tables. He then flipped the desk the teacher's stuff was on. Afterwards, he would walk back to his desk. Now, when the teacher walked in, it really wasn't the best outcome the boys probably hoped for. All of the boys would get 13 days worth of detention and would have to pay $300 Australian in money. Let's just say it didn't stop there. Story 11. Business class. Teacher leaves. Some kid decides to throw a bottle from the very back of the class to the bin at the front, small bin about 25 feet away. Threw it and managed to hit the edge and balance perfectly on the edge of the bin. No one believed what they were seeing. I thought it had stuck and couldn't balance like that. Teacher came back and picked the bottle up, demanding to know who threw it. The kid who threw it stood up and threw his chair at her. One of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but honestly, with the odds of all that happening, the chair throw isn't that outrageous. Story 12. So one of my French teachers left the class for about 5 minutes, so we decided to prank by completely swapping out everything in her class. The water bottle was now on the other side of her desk, but we also decided to completely move chairs, tables, and ourselves in the weirdest places. For example, I sat next to this random Jewish girl that I barely knew. Weirdly enough, the class nerd didn't even snitch. Story 13. Story time! I had a science teacher back in 8th grade. She was a marine turtle rescuer, but was absolutely dumber than our original teacher. So the student decided to mess with her. They literally did everything bad to the gas taps. They even had added condoms on all of the hoses. It got so bad, in fact, that 3 of the vice/principals had to walk in and scold the entire class about their behavior. She only quit in just a couple of months when she started. Absolute madness. Story 14. Okay, I find this funny. In 5th grade, my teacher had to leave the room to do something. I don't fully remember, and while he was gone, a kid maybe 4 foot even started playing music on his phone and started grinding on a standing lamp like a strip pole. It got even better when a few of the guys and girls started throwing singles at him. Story 15. I don't know what schools these kids went to, but my school never got this chaotic when a teacher left the classroom. The most that would happen is people moving seats to be closer to their friends, to chat or go on their phones.
Yeah, you and me both. People move some seats around and stuff. Actually, no, once the teacher did leave the classroom, the teacher had a last name that was the same as a very popular brand. And I went up to the chalkboard and wrote a joke referencing that brand and this teacher's name. And I guess that was kind of wild. I'm a bit of a wild child. I got sent to the principal and I got a period of detention. That was it.
Story 16. The teacher left the room in 5th grade. Myself and a classmate started an insane paper ball fight that ended up taking the whole class with it. One half of the room versus the other half. Never seen our teacher that peed before. It was great. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.